My name is Joyce Hawks, PhD, author of Cell Level Healing, The Bridge from Soul to Cell, and our discussion is on compassion. It's very interesting to me coming through hardcore science that I was trained in almost the cellular end of survival of the fittest. What happens to cells as they evolve in beings and species as they evolve? But my personal experience was discovering the power, if you will, of compassion and the information that comes out of cultures where cooperation and compassion work rather than competition. So I see in the sort of large sweep of things the efficacy of compassion. At a cellular level, compassion has now been shown to create neurogenesis. The brain cells in the cortex of our brain that are crucial for cognition, for doing all of the mental activity we need to do, especially as we age, are replaced when we engage exercise, fine motor skills, and compassion. This is an amazing thing that there's actual cells within our body that respond to the emotion, the actions of compassion. It was thought for a long time that the minute we're born and in the first few months of life, we have all the brain cells we're ever going to have. The truth is that our brain cells do divide. They are replenished very slowly. And technology has had to develop to be able to show us that they actually do divide, that there are new ones that are formed. And compassion actually is one of the facilitators, if not the driver, that allows those brain cells to be replenished. I think that's really incredible news and allows us to develop what is, I believe, natural to us as human beings. I see it in animals. Also, there's a sense of cooperation in many species. And when we learn that as humans, and we move and walk in our lives with a true sense of cooperation and acknowledgement, honoring of each other, life certainly goes better in our communities, but it also goes better in our own bodies and inside our noggins. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to look at what's going on in our culture now with the sense of needing to kill each other. In Seattle recently, 4 police officers were murdered. It's touched us all. It still touches me quite deeply. It's just crazy. And we know that people go over the edge into aggressive behavior. What pushes that is one of those mysteries of human life. And people with means and with opportunity who become greedy. This has been with us a long time as a species, as humans. It seems like when there's a lot of stress in our environment, as our population grows, as resources are limited, as there are challenges everywhere, some of those really bad behaviors pop out. However, there are also people that I meet daily or speak with daily across the world. My practice now includes clients that live in Australia and England and the Netherlands and across Canada as well as the United States. There are lots of people who are living compassionate lives, who are sharing and giving in very tangible ways, as well as in modes of prayer or meditation for the world. So there's the struggle of both sides that we've had since we've been humans. I think we're able to see some of the really difficult behavior because we're so hooked up with media that we know about it, where in our own communities we might not have heard about it before. And it's sad, it is sad that there is this expanse of what is difficult and mean and murderous at times. And one hopes that each of us can learn to live with compassion soon. We need it right away. There's not a lot known about why we have so much increase in dementia and ADD and younger people. It's an unusual time. Perhaps it's that we identify it better. Perhaps our ability to know what's wrong is far better than it's been in the past. Perhaps we're just living longer, and this is the way things happen. However, what's known is that there's breaks in nerves in the brain when Alzheimer's hits, for example. There are images of nerve cells with the plaque showing right in the place that it's eroding the connection between nerve cells. And when those nerve cells lose their connection, we lose cognition, we lose memory, we lose the ability to even remember and identify our loved ones. What can change this? In my experience of 25 years of being in practice now, working with the spiritual side of things, along with somewhat of a psychological side of things, but deep meditative practices, particularly ones that include compassion, actually support neurogenesis. And so new nerve cells are produced in the brain, and those are working fine. So we can be a whole lot older, and our brains continue to work because we've got the hardware, the neurons, the wiring inside of our brains that allow our mind to work well. It's interesting that several things happen. Fine motor skills, exercise, and, as I said, compassion meditation actually support neurogenesis as well as support our immune systems. So here's one of the things that we definitely can do in our life to prevent us from that deep slide that takes our minds as we get older. I've also worked with people, young people with ADD and ADHD, and there's something about shifting a level of consciousness with them so that they can tap their own deep resources for centering that works really well. I've also worked with some autistic children, and my sense of them was that they had 100 TV and audio stations rolling all at once, and it was unsettling, confusing, and frightening. And some of them, the little ones, like 5-year-olds, were just rather terrified of all this input. Now, these are kids who are really smart. They're kids who are sensitive. They're kids who I think, as they grow up, are one of the answers to many of the problems our culture faces because they come in gifted. What helps them? What I've been able to do is, in almost non-verbal ways, assist them to feel safe, and then begin to work with them to figure out how to tune one station at a time so that they develop a sense of control rather than being overwhelmed by everything smacking them all at once. And as they begin to do that, they no longer exhibit the difficulties of autism or Asperger's syndrome. I've seen a couple of kids who were severely affected. One is 5 years down the road now, and from the time we started working, and he's in public school, gifted program, looks you right in the eye, talks a blue streak. So I've had experience with helping to support good, healthy brain activity in both older people, preventative measures as we grow older, and reversing some of the things we're seeing in some of our young people. Each day I do a considerable amount of time devoted to meditation. And that's not about discipline. It may have started with discipline, but it's truly about, this is a place of great enjoyment and bliss. When I'm doing that work, I have a sense that my heart opens quite deeply. The brainwave testing, both testing here in the United States with 18 sensors, and also in Japan with 125 sensors at Nihon University, showed that my brain runs unusual brainwave patterns. They tested me both meditating, where my brain pretty much shuts down. There's not much activity going on. What activity is there includes beta waves, which is the clear, awake mind, and delta. Delta is usually only seen in a deep sleeping state. I run both the aware, awake mind and deep sleep state simultaneously all the time. When I'm doing healing work, and that protocol is about focusing on an individual, focusing a sense of connection with them that's quite deep and compassionate, not lovey-dovey, but compassionate, and then sending healing to them. It's a little hard to describe how I send healing. That's developed over so many years. But my whole body's involved, and my focus is with the person, whatever it is that is the illness or the issue with them. And I'm drawn deeply to the cellular level, because that's my background and training in biophysics and as a cell biologist working with the electron microscope for so many years. So in these moments when the focus is deeply with the person and profoundly at the cellular level where their malady is, whatever it is, cancer, arthritis, whatever, in those moments the delta waves in my brain peak 6 to 7 times higher than any of the other brain waves. There's alpha running, there's theta running, and there's beta. But delta peaks all over my brain, in all of the sensors, all at once. And that's just an amazing thing to see. You know, the protocols that I use when I'm doing healing work have really come directly to me. They're not a standard protocol. Some of them I learned from my teachers and indigenous healers who are indigenous healers in other cultures. But they've come more directly to me when I'm in meditation. Information just shows up. Now, there's also in the general culture lots of information about the use of compassion meditation. Wolf Singer in Frankfurt, Germany spoke of this. There's publications in the neural report that comes out of Yale University. There's a lot of discussion about this in the Mind and Life Institute, in which the Dalai Lama participates, as well as major scientists, including Richard Davidson from the University of Wisconsin. So there's bits and pieces in our culture and in our research community in a number of places which inform this. However, when I'm directly working with an individual, it's not a 1, 2, 3 thing. It's very much adapted for that individual, for how they seem to be receptive. I'm talking with them. I'm trying to understand what's working with them. But I'm also moving into a rather different state of consciousness. I'm not, out of it, or it doesn't seem like a weird state, but it's a deeper state in which I'm getting information. I'm picking up a sense of the individual and how, with focus of the mind, to move that connection into a healing space at a very deep and cellular level for them, where the neurons connect, where the fabulous glial cells, the astrocytes in the brain, which we have 10 times more than our neurons, and these particular cells that look like little bitty stars all over our brains, are actually very active and involved in cognition. It was once thought they were just scaffolding, just sitting there doing nothing. Now we know they're very active. So there's a great deal of interesting information coming from a lot of different resources now. I'm a fellow in the American Association for Advancement of Science, based on my work many years ago with high-speed laser effects on cells. I'm still a fellow in the American Association for Advancement of Science, and I read the journal Science every week. And it's been amazing in these last handful of years of the new technologies which have brought us information that substantiates some of the things I'm talking about and the things that I see in doing a simple healing practice that leads people to meditation, that leads people to reaching deeply within themselves and their own profound resources for healing. So many of us consider ourselves healing facilitators who are able to instruct, encourage, connect with, walk with, and support people to find healing for themselves. I'm not an expert in nutrition, but I know for myself and for many of my clients that when they eat better, they do better. And so it makes sense that we have to supply our body and our neurons with the basic elements that they need to do well. And lots of sugar isn't it. So personally, I like to shop in farmers markets, and we have a co-op in this area which has wonderful organic food. My sense is that I can almost feel the difference in food that has some vitality to it, and that's what I choose. So I know nutrition is important in a very reasonable sense. Each week I see around 20 clients, both here and abroad, by telephone or by Skype, and in my office. And many of the people who wind up working with me as a healing facilitator come because they've exhausted whatever is out there in traditional Western medicine. They're upset because they feel they're over-medicated. They're upset because nothing is helping them. Their lives are disintegrating in front of them. I'm somebody with my science background who really enjoys being a team member, assisting someone with this as an aspect of healing, not the total deal. So I work with physicians, psychotherapists, and sometimes work in hospitals just directly with families or with patients. And so I've seen this whole range of the wonders of Western medicine, the use, good use of science, the incredible technology that helps people. And then I've seen abuses of it, where docs just throw meds at people and it's not helping them. I hear frequently, my doctor doesn't listen to me. I'm too sensitive. They're giving me meds that I'm just way too sensitive for, and the side effects are awful. They're worse than whatever it was that was bothering me. So it's a real thorny problem. It's a difficult one, and I guess the clarion call, the request is, would our physicians please take more time, listen to their patients, realize that there are people whose bodies are not standard. They're very sensitive. There are some docs that I know who do exactly this, who really take time with their patients, who listen to them, who are able to adjust some of the wonders of medication that are helpful and that are needed so that they work for an individual. I also know that adding any form of, you might call it meditation, any form of practice that enables someone to come closer to their own core and their own healing abilities help people tremendously, and they can move off of meds. I've worked with a young man who was diagnosed schizophrenic, and we worked together in teaching him some meditation, some healing work for himself, and using this practice of imagining breathing in the quality of balance, letting it transform what was out of balance in his body, like his neurons, and then breathing out, just imagining breathing out the quality of harmony. He worked with his psychiatrist because his symptoms began to ameliorate, and now he is almost entirely off of medication at his psychiatrist's okay, and doing extremely well in his life. So I've seen it work, but it's about empowering the individual, and as a practitioner working with them to find ways of using alternatives that are helpful. My personal experience was discovering the power, if you will, of compassion, and the information that comes out of cultures where cooperation and compassion work rather than competition. At a cellular level, compassion has now been shown to create neurogenesis. The brain cells in the cortex of our brain that are crucial for cognition, for doing all of the mental activity we need to do, especially as we age, are replaced when we engage exercise, fine motor skills, and compassion. This is an amazing thing, that there's actual cells within our body that respond to the emotion, the actions of compassion. Compassion actually is one of the facilitators, if not the driver, that allows those brain cells to be replenished. I think that's really incredible news, and allows us to develop what is, I believe, natural to us as human beings. I see it in animals also. There's a sense of cooperation in many species. And when we learn that as humans, and we move and walk in our lives with a true sense of cooperation and acknowledgement, honoring of each other, life certainly goes better in our communities, but it also goes better in our own bodies and inside our noggins. Working with the spiritual side of things, along with somewhat of a psychological side of things, but deep meditative practices, particularly ones that include compassion, actually support neurogenesis. And so new nerve cells are produced in the brain, and those are working fine. So we can be a whole lot older, and our brains continue to work because we've got the hardware, the neurons, the wiring inside of our brains that allow our mind to work well. It's interesting that several things happen. Fine motor skills, exercise, and, as I said, compassion meditation actually support neurogenesis as well as support our immune systems. The clarion call, the request is, would our physicians please take more time, listen to their patients, realize that there are people whose bodies are not standard. They're very sensitive. There are some docs that I know who do exactly this, who really take time with their patients, who listen to them, who are able to adjust some of the wonders of medication that are helpful and that are needed so that they work for an individual. I also know that adding any form of, you might call it meditation, any form of practice that enables someone to come closer to their own core and their own healing abilities help people tremendously, and they can move off of meds.